Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in our beautiful world. And we just can't get over the love you've been showering upon us since we launched our premiere episode. And we are really inspired to keep the conversations going. We're fired to keep having good conversations. We do know you enjoy it. Thank you for your feedbacks. And please continue to engage with our content and share with your friends, families, enemies, loved ones, colleagues, everybody basically. And ready for today's episode? Let's go! Today I'm not on my own. I've got beautiful people and we'll be doing this together. So to my left, I think we'll be starting the introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deshola Shoson. I'm a mom, 2 boys. I'm a wife. It'll be 14 years this July. So it's been fun. It's been a long road, but mostly fun. Professionally, I'm a family life specialist, family life strategist. My passion is in parenting, so I do quite a bit of parenting coaching. I support teenagers, I support young people, and more recently I've been working with children and learning a lot, growing by that experience. And I'm so pleased and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hello guys. So my name is Francisca. I am single, not certain. I am currently working on myself, trying to figure out who I am in Christ, hence why I'm not searching at the moment. So I work as well as a mature student, so I study in my own time. That's basically what I do.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ina Okpa. I'm doing my PhD in accounting and robotics. I just got married just a month ago. So I'm quite new into the marriage life. So I'll be quite happy to share with us the few things I've learned in just 1 year sojourn. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Valentine Olatunji, and yes, I'm a nurse, and I'm also a wife, married to the absolute love of my life. It's been a year and a half, I would say, and it's been amazing. And so I'm happy to be here, and I can't wait to share all the juicy stories with you. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jean-Luc. I am married with 4 children, and for work, I work as a DCO for Home Office. Thank you.
Nice to have everybody. I guess I've not introduced myself yet. So my name is Emmanuel Oludare. I'm a nurse. I work in one of the NHS trusts in England. I'm single, but thank God I'm joined with another single lady in the house, so I don't feel lonely. What else do I do? So I do other things. An entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, and I love God and I love people as well. So I love creating impact. So I'm very value driven. So I guess that will do for now. But thank you for coming around, guys. Thank you so much for coming. So in today's episode, we shall be talking about a topic very important. It's a topic that we tend not to pay attention to before we get into relationships or even after we get into relationships. And the kind of relationships we'll be centering on today, as you might tell, will be romantic relationships. So, in today's episode, we shall be firing different arrows, and don't be scared. So what the arrow I mean is just arrows of wisdom. So as soon as an arrow hits you, I just want you to drop your offering. So for people listening to us, we'll bring your offering basket online so you drop something. So, but straight into the business. Compatibility is something that we most often think about before we propose or even consider a proposal. And if you've ever viewed a dating profile online, let's say you want to get on Bumble or Tinder or any of those apps, basically, they will ask some questions, and you will notice that those questions is just trying to it's just for compatibility reasons. So you must have a certain level of self-awareness to answer those questions, and then that helps them to filter who they're going to bring to your feed while you're searching on those applications. So compatibility is very important, but very key thing before you can now start talking about compatibility will be self-awareness. But before we get into the juicy part of the conversation, I'll just throw some questions open to our guests today. So, have you ever had an ideal partner that you had? A picture you've had in mind about what an ideal partner should look like? Basically, when I was growing up, because we watched a lot of Indian movies, so our taste in women has always been, I want someone
Long hair.
Indian, the long hair, someone you can dance together with, So that was as at that level. So I don't know if at any point in time, especially for those that are married, did you have any sort of mental picture before you even met the one that this is what I want my future partner to look like? Anybody?
Okay, I'll take a stab at this one. For me, before I got married, it was a blend of what I wanted and what I could not stand. So personally, I'm Nigerian, and in Nigerian terms, we would say spec, okay? So my spec was certainly not a fair-skinned guy. I didn't understand why a man should be fair-skinned. So for me, it was a problem. I think the fact that I'm fair-skinned myself didn't help, but I just didn't. It was like if a guy came next to me and came close to me and he was remotely leaning towards being fair-skinned, it was just don't even bother, don't try. So I was absolutely certain about that, and it was like there was no way I was going to end up with a fair-skinned guy. All right. So in terms of physical attributes, that was something I was not willing to contemplate at all. But I was particular about the heart. Okay. Kindness was important to me. And for me, it was like, how do you treat people? How do you address people? And especially people that are seemingly beneath you. So I wasn't going to hang around someone who was disrespectful or dismissive to other people. It was just not a vibe that I was going to tolerate around me. And if I would sum up my mom's dating advice in one sentence, it was, what you can't eat, don't smell. And that was something that she said to me. That's the only thing, African moms don't usually encourage their children to date. They just expect them to marry. I don't understand that bit as well. But it was just, you're going to school, you're going to university, what you cannot eat, don't smell. And in essence, what that meant was, if the person was not marriable, don't date them. So for me, it was clear cut. I looked at that person today, and if I couldn't marry that person in their current state, there was no point. So yeah, for me, it was both physical in terms of the initial matter and the mental state, the way the person approached other people and interacted. So yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, please. So I have spec, I had spec, and it has changed over time. It changed over time. I would say when I was like really young, I would say I want someone that's tall, dark, and handsome, and has plenty money. But after a while, I got matured, and the level of my maturity, it helped me to, change my spec. So there's something I used to do back then. I have a place where I write it, what I want in a man, all the qualities I want in a man. So I write it from tall, dark, and handsome. So I could see how it changed over time from tall, dark, and handsome to thinking about the heart. And then it got to a time when I was in school, involved in so much of church and fellowships and all of that. I just wanted tongue-talking brother, those pulpit brother that they can't, all those kind of thing, But after a while again, And you know, the funny thing is that at some point I met all what I wanted. I met someone that is tall, dark, and handsome. I met someone that is tongue speaking. I met the fireful brothers. I met all sorts. But I just knew that this was not what I wanted. So at some point I had to sit down and then I took stock. What do I really want? Like, I start thinking about the heart. Someone that is kind, someone that is loving, someone that truly loves me. Someone that is not only just the fruits, only just the gifts, but the fruits. This person, does he love? Is he kind? Does he love God? Is he growing? Or is he just is speaking in tongues, but is getting angry, is he have anger issues? Or is treating people badly? Or is still being disrespectful to people? So, yes, growing up, I do have speak and all of that, but it has changed over time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to hear from the men. We've been hearing from the ladies, boys, men. Pastor Ina, the machine man. AI.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for this question. I think that for me, the definition of what an ideal woman should be or would be for me has not changed over time, has remained the same. And that will be because of my very early involvement with God. So I have lived a life of leading missions from childhood. So I knew that any girl I was going to date and eventually marry was going to be a girl who loves the Lord passionately. For me, this was my first spec in any woman I was going to marry. It was going to be a woman who loves the Lord. Because I think that for me to love the Lord will be everything. I define beauty as loving God. And then if she loves God, it's easy for her to understand what God has called me to do. So we can easily flow in what God has called me to doing. Again, I have always said, God, I'm not going to marry a woman that cannot walk with me on the streets. It's been my thing from childhood. I've seen many people that have served under who are pastors who married wives that they are not proud of. That's what I'm saying.
That's the physical part.
That's the physical part, yeah. So, of course, that's what I'm trying to say. So, they marry people they are not proud of, people who are not fine, not good looking, and they marry women who, after a few months or a few years, they're like, I don't even know why I got married to you. So for me, you love the Lord is a first thing. Number two, you must be physically beautiful. I can't marry a woman that I would not appreciate over the years. I have always had an aversion for women who are too big for me. This has been also one of my very key specs. I want a woman I can grow up with. So I can say, hey, babe, I think we need to start jogging this week. And she will not be like, oh, I don't want to jog. Because she also has a love, a passion for staying the way she is. So if I say, babe, we need to hit the gym, it becomes something easy for her to do. So for me, loving God was critical. Physical beauty was essential. And then not being fat for me was, for me, this has been my personal thing. And it's remained the same till today.
You've got someone who loves you.
Of course, you've got someone else. Not Ina. Thank you.
But it's good to hear beep from your mouth. I hear fire a lot from you. So it's so good to hear the word beep from you. So, look.
Personally, I've never really had an ideal person or a spec, as you say. For me, it was from when I started dating. It's just a matter of attraction. I either like you or I don't. So I never sat down and said, this is the kind of woman I want to meet. Because for me, just like you just said, the physical attraction was important for me. I have to be physically attracted to you before I can even contemplate getting to know you. Because that, for me, is the thing that opens the door. Some people do say that, beauty is inside, or sometimes you might have a person who's got a good character. But if I'm not physically attracted to you, I've known from early that I can adapt to any personality types. As long as I like who you are. I can adapt to your personality. So for me, it's never been an issue. So in terms of ideal person, I honestly can't. Even if you ask me now, what kind of woman would you like to meet? Well, I know what attributes I like physically. I know in terms of character, you just want somebody who's got normal characters that a normal, sensible human being should have. Somebody who's kind, generous, thoughtful, not selfish. Somebody who doesn't give you stress and things like that. So it's just, you just want a person who's not going to give you a headache. So there's nothing exceptional in that respect. But in terms of the physical attributes, just like my brother just said, yeah, I have to be attracted to you. I cannot force myself to say, okay, you're a good person, so I'm going to be with you, even though I'm not attracted to you, because that's just going to be, I'm going to be lying to myself every day. So that's my take.
Okay.
Okay, Francisca?
Being single, I think working on my relationship with Christ has meant that my definition of what a man should be or what my husband should be has changed. I think for me, it's more so now, he has to love God. And I think a lot of people with my experience being single, you meet a lot of guys who obviously say they're Christians, but it's a facade. They don't actually know God. They don't actually have a relationship with God. And I think for me, working on my relationship with God has also defined what the man I should be looking for should be. He needs to love, as a husband, you are to love your wife like Christ loved the church. So my husband obviously should love me in that way as well. And he has to be patient. He has to be kind. So just to kind of summarize, working on my relationship with God, having a relationship with God, giving my life to Christ has actually redefined my definition of what a man should be and what my husband should be. So, yeah.
Powerful points, everybody. So my next question will be basically about, before you enter a relationship, you have certain expectations for what the relationship should look like. And like he wants someone that will cooperate with him. So he wants cooperation. Someone said understanding. Someone said sacrifice. Those are expectations for relationships. But oftentimes we tend to have expectations. We expect this so person, my ID partner or my partner, or my husband or my wife or my girlfriend, wherever. I expect this in a relationship, but oftentimes we do not introspect to see that it takes two to tango. You can't give what you don't have. I want understanding, but am I understanding myself? So I just want us to genuinely, and I know this is, we are all growing. So, did you consider the expectations that you had for your relationships? For married people, for instance, you had certain expectations before you got married. Did you consider whether you were mature enough to have those expectations met? Before you now start saying, I expect my partner to do this, to do that. But did you see yourself in the picture, in the light of those expectations? So honestly, we can answer because for myself, it wasn't 100%. I grew into it based on reflection and learning. So I just want us to answer honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it speaks directly to what you said earlier about self-awareness. And you've already touched on introspection. And I think it can be difficult to look in the mirror sometimes, to, see yourself and be completely honest and transparent with yourself. And when it comes to relationships, I think that is critical because self-awareness helps you know yourself, know your limits, understand your failings, and also recognize your strengths. And so while it is hard, it may be difficult to look at in the mirror, like I said, if you don't go through that process of self-examination, you don't identify where your strengths are as well. And I think it's important also to add, if you don't know yourself well enough, how do you teach someone else to love you? How do you define love? What is that expectation that you referenced earlier? What does it mean to you? If you don't know what your own love language is, for instance, you don't recognize, if you're like me, that food for you is a love language. And for you, for me, let me just talk about myself. Eating is directly tied to how I feel. So if I'm upset, I'm offended, or what in an uncomfortable state of being, if my husband offers me food, I'm likely to say I'm all right. And before he understood that, he thought it was personal. But now he realizes that, okay, when she's upset, she does not eat. It's not because I'm angry at him. So if I flipped that, if it was a man that said he wasn't going to eat at home, in cultural terms, it might be a case of, oh, he's angry with his wife, or he's rejecting her food, as it were. But if he was the kind of person who realizes that there's a relationship between both, then he can explain to the other party and say, look, this is how things are. And that came from me understanding myself, reflecting and introspecting, right? But you asked about expectations. Yes, there were expectations going into marriage. This is how I expect to be treated. But it took me learning myself first. It took me understanding myself first. And it, going on that journey also helped me identify my own shortcomings. So rather than put all the expectation on my husband, I am also able to be humble and realize that I'm work in progress, and that he not being all right in a particular area to my personal standards, which can be quite warped. If we look at it critically, sometimes we have grandiose expectations of other people, standards that we don't hold ourselves to. We just expect perfection from the other person. It doesn't always work out like that. But when we are introspective and we're self-aware, we're able to be accommodating. We're able to understand that the same way we're on a journey is the same way they're on a journey as well. And we can approach instances of disagreements with compassion, a willingness to grow and to change, and accommodate their own shortcomings and failings as well.
Very beautifully said. I guess she's already on that head and started talking about what self-awareness is, which is really beautiful. She's a family specialist. So Mr. already. Well, the only sad part is I didn't come and change, man. I think I'll make it transparent.
My dad is here. My dad is here.
Since I'm allergic to yours. I just want us to see what your journey was like as far as expectations is concerned.
My journey, because for me, when I started dating, it was not proper relationships. I started dating when I was like 15 or 14. So I was just seeing girls just for pleasure purpose. There was no commitment to a long-term relationship. I certainly was not thinking about marriage. So in my life, there's been like 3 types of relationships. There's relationships where you've got a girl that you see, but you're not in a relationship. You're just seeing each other. You're just having fun, so to speak. So you're not together, but you're seeing each other on the regular. Do you understand? It used to be called links when I was growing up. And then you've got another relationship with just boyfriend and girlfriend, but you're just boyfriend and girlfriend because you're kind of in the same, like let's say you're going through university together, or you're going through a particular event or scenario together. So again, at that point, I'm not thinking this is going to be my wife. You're not thinking that level. But when it comes to the next level, you're looking for your wife, that's a whole different thing, because now you expect you're going to be with this person for the rest of your life. So just like any relationship, just like how a father will relate to a son, or a mother will relate to a daughter, or how you relate to your children and so forth, you need certain key things have to be there in terms of communication, honesty, in terms of people being able to be considerate to each other. So those things you expect from a long-term relation, because you're going to be with that person for the rest of your life. So honesty is definitely important for me. That's what I expect, because I know I'm willing to give that. Communication is key, because if you're not communicating, it doesn't matter. Like my wife has a thing of thinking that I can read her mind, and I'm telling her, if you don't communicate it to me, I haven't received it, and I'm not going to know what's going on. We've been together for a while, so yeah, some things I can pick up, but certain things you need to actually vocally say it, or at least express in some respect, so I know what's going on. So I think for me, it starts with communication, and you have to communicate honestly, and then you have to obviously be considering. You have to consider how the other person feels. Like he says, how treat others how you want to be treated, and that will just work well.
Yes, for me, I think self-awareness, once I started to be more self-aware and I started to sort of self-reflect, it's made me realize that I am not ready for what I'm praying for. I'm praying for a man who has a relationship with God. Do I have a relationship with God? I'm praying for a man who speaks in tongues. Do I speak in tongues? So this actually made it very important as to why I need to wait, because during this waiting season, God is working on me. And this is very important so I can actually see and understand when the man that God has actually made for me comes, so I can actually see these things and these things that God has actually highlighted in my head and through his words, and actually tick it off that, oh yes, this is the man God has actually spoken to me, that he's coming and he's here. So I think the waiting season for me right now is very important because I'm starting to understand who I am. I'm starting to know my weaknesses. I'm starting to know who I am in Christ. I'm starting to work in being patient. I want my husband to be patient. Am I patient? Am I kind? And I think these are things that I'm currently working on. And I think this only came through by being self-aware and self-reflecting on my weakness and my strength. So I think self-awareness as well as self-reflection is very important.
Yeah, thank you. This is quite personal to me. The question really wants to find out what my expectations were for my relationship before I went into my relationship.
Do you consider your level of maturity to have those expectations met?
Yeah, so I think that growing up from childhood, so my story was we had a father who was never there for our mother. So mom was everything to us. So we saw our mother do everything to make sure the family was there. Dad was too busy, going around sleeping with every girl he went to have, of course he was a young man. So he wasn't committed to the family life at the time. So for me, when it was time for me to commit to someone, a critical thing was telling myself, I don't want to be like my father. First, I don't want to be like my father. While I expect my wife to be so much more, I also want to be so much more for her, like she just mentioned. I do not want to put so much on her than what I'm able to deliver and give as well. Otherwise, I will be using her, not loving her. Because there's a tendency that you expect so much from the person that you're married to or you're getting married to. You put so much pressure on them. Why not get this done? Why not get this done? And when you reflect on yourself, you are 0 from 100. You're not even doing anything on yourself. And so it becomes a mismatch per se. So one of the things I did was, okay, babe, I love you. This is where we want to be in the next 5 years. But this is what I want to achieve as well. So while I'm pursuing you to grow to this level, I'm also growing. So you don't look back and say, oh, you're pushing me so much and I can't see no progress in you. So this for me is what I do.
Okay, so with everything that's said, so I'll quickly move to the next question. Do you think the lack of self-awareness currently contributes to failures in relationships that we tend to see that's quite rampant? The lack of introspection, seeing, looking at the mirror basically and seeing the man or the woman in the mirror to say, I'm expecting someone who can communicate, but are you a good listener? So you want someone who communicates, the person who's communicating, but you're not listening. Very practically, you will see people, I talk to people quite a lot. And then there's certain people you can't just have 5 seconds, they are on their phones. So, and then it does not give the impression that you are listening to me. That's not active listening to me. So the question will now be, do you think the lack of self-awareness contributes to failures in relationships? Anybody?
Okay. Yes, I would say so. And this is not to make anyone feel bad or upset or to feel like they've actively stood in their own way. We do the best we can with what we know. And I think having this kind of conversation is a good opportunity for anyone who is willing to grow, having that growth mindset of recognizing one's limitations, and then taking active steps to make an improvement. In terms of relationships breaking down here and there, let me just say that it appears that way. There are a lot more relationships that are going strong. than are falling apart. And as humans, we're hardwired to focus on negative. And it just calls out to us something about childhood trauma, but that's not what we're talking about now. But yes, there are a lot of relationships that are going strong, 40 years, 50 years. And sometimes you also realize that it's not even about the length of times, but how happy they are together. There are people who are very, very happy to be involved with each other. And I think it's important for us to focus on that and not keep looking towards negative and taking our eyes off what it is that we want in terms of expectations. So yes, a lot of people are not aware. They don't know themselves. If you don't know yourself, how can you teach another person to know you? Self-awareness is about being in tune or being aware of your own thoughts, your own tendencies, your personality, your strengths, your abilities, and all of that. And it comes by introspection. It comes by reflection. Sometimes it comes by having conversations with people that know you. When we work with people who have challenges or situations that they're not quite pleased with, we do this road mapping exercise, which is fantastic because it just helps to draw a parallel between a time when something changed when the person was younger and where they are now. So sometimes we're able to tie that particular instance or that behavior to something that happened years back. So we have them go to people who knew them when they were 5 years old, 10 years old, 15, 20. And you just realize that there was a significant event in their lives that just changed the trajectory. Sometimes we see personalities flip and they change, and somebody would say, at age 5 they were happy and playful, and then suddenly maybe at age 12 the person became withdrawn, and people who didn't know them in that time frame, in that window, would probably think they were two different people. So it's a traumatic experience, and sometimes it's just helpful, like I said earlier, it's not to feel bad, it's just to recognize that sometimes things happen to us that are beyond our control, but we have a responsibility to go from there and to become better. So it is a case of reflecting, looking at yourself. If you're in a situation or you've had back-to-back experiences where relationships have failed in your hands, how about you take responsibility and ask questions? What resulted in this? How did I contribute to this? Because that's that introspection that we're talking about. How did I contribute to this situation? What can I learn from that experience? Do I need help? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to read a book? Do I need to restrain myself or refrain from myself from getting into another situationship, rather so that I can heal from that past experience, rather than just going headlong and then compounding the situation. So yes, I do think it contributes. I don't think the media helps. I don't think the perception around us helps with that idea that, look, I as long as I'm okay, or I can do whatever I want, the other person is the person who has to meet me halfway. Sometimes we just need to shift our position. And something that I try to encourage people to do every now and again is to ask themselves why they believe what they believe. Have a belief system audit. And sometimes beliefs were handed to us by people who don't know us, people who don't understand us, who didn't look at our personality, and people who forced their own perception of things on us because of the way they saw things and their own unique circumstances. So we need to do that belief audit every now and again. Just check. And then when we behave in certain ways, just ask ourselves, why did I do that? Why did I act like that? Sometimes those questions just force us to think. We draw into ourselves, and hopefully we're able to grow from there.
Fantastically said. Paul, I guess you want to say something?
Yes, please. So, of course, lack of self-awareness can cause or contribute to failure in some relationships. So, like Sister Desola said, how can you, if you don't love yourself or you don't know yourself, how can you help someone else to know you? Like, it's impossible. Like, you have to know who you are. Who are you? Who are you really? What do you like? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What makes you happy? What has God called you to be? Because we are Christians, so those things are very important. We must know what your purpose is. Even Adam, when God created Adam, God gave him something to do. This is what he should do. Name the animals, do this, do that. Before he had a purpose, before God brought Eve to him. So he had something he was doing. He knows that he is the one in charge. of this garden. So, and he is working in that. So as Christians, we want to know who we are also in Christ Jesus. We want to know what our purpose is. And that will shape the kind of person we would choose. It will shape, we won't just settle for less, right? But we won't settle for anybody, because not everybody, we are not for anybody. We are for some people that understand us. Okay, so it's very important you know who you are. When you know who you are, then you can know the right set of people to choose. And yeah, I think that's what I want to say for now.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Paula. I would like to hear from any of the men.
Okay. Self-awareness is definitely paramount in a relationship, because I think that before you can relate to somebody else, like the sisters said, you have to be able to relate to yourself. The Bible teaches that a man shall leave his family, shall leave his mother and father and find a wife, and together they become one. So you're completing each other. And in order for that to happen, you have to be able to nourish each other. You have to be conducive to each other's development. And when I was growing up, what I realized is most of us knew what we wanted, but we didn't really know what we needed. And there's a big difference, because for me, how I see it is sometimes it's like a good example I like to give is like food. Look at food, for example. When you look at food, most of us eat because we want to eat. We have a desire to eat, or it's tasty. It's a snack. It's something that makes you feel good. It's something that might satisfy your taste buds, or it might even emotionally satisfy you, but it's not going to nourish you. What we really need is a wholesome meal. And when I was growing up, most of us were trying to get snacks to satisfy us, which was it will just satisfy your basic desires, but it's not going to satisfy, it's not going to complement you, it's not going to nourish you, so to speak. So we struggled when I was growing up to differentiate between the want and the need, and I think that was due to a lack of self-awareness. Once you know what kind of person you want to develop into, and then you know what's good for you. You know, just like how an athlete knows what food to eat to nourish his body, a person who's looking for a strong, mature relationship will also know what kind of person they need in their life to complement them in that respect.
You want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something very funny is if you eventually go into a relationship or into a marriage with someone without knowing who you are, you end up, it will be like you water going into a cup, right? You end up being assuming the shape of whatever it is your partner calls you. You'll be whoever he has called you to be, right? So you won't, because you don't know who you are, you just do whatever he asks you to do. You like what he asks you to like, or you be that person that he wants you to be completely. I mean, all is yes is you say yes. All is no. At the end of the day, you will find out that you've lost yourself, and you will find out that you're actually unhappy. So it's really important you know who you are. One of the questions that I had to ask myself when I got to that age, when I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to get married and I have to think, who am I? One of the questions I asked myself is, Folashade, can you marry yourself? So I looked at myself with my sharp mouth and my bad behaviors. With this behavior, can you marry yourself? If you see this exact person, the replica of who you are, will you be happy to marry this person? And that helped me, learn about myself, the things I need to curb, the things I need to, by God's grace, that God is still helping me to curb. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just a few minutes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for these great contributions. So when I was reflecting on this, few questions popped up in my mind. And this is from a paper I did some years back. It's called Singles Potency. And in that paper, I tried to explore the whole value creation from a single individual that transmits into their relationship life. One of them I asked was, if you know all about you, will you marry you? Okay, you expect someone to cope with you, to stick with you. You expect someone to live and spend all their lives with you, like Sister just talked about here. But if you're in your shoe, will you marry you? You can't forgive yourself, but you hope that someone else will forgive you. You can't cope with you, but you're hoping your partner, the person you're in with a relationship with, should actually be forgiving and cope with you. That's almost impossible. Again, there's something called the leech relationship. It's a leech because you're dating someone or you're married to someone and you don't know who you are, and you expect the person to know you completely. You have not even known who you are, and you hope the person will keep worshiping and accepting you with all your flaws, with all your mistakes, and then you begin to judge them because you think that they don't understand you enough, and that's quite a problem. I also have something here. I call it the value creation principle. So we don't come into relationships as 0-100. Each partner must be 100. So it means everyone is already self-aware of who they are and what they are committing into. So at the end of the relationship or at the end of life, they still remain 100 when they come together. Because there's a tendency that when I'm 100 and my wife is 0, I will pour out my whole life into her. And that doesn't make sense. So every individual must be first self-aware of who they are, and then this will help to sustain whatever they're going into. And this is where value is created in relationships. So Sister mentioned from the very beginning, there are people who are very happy to be together. That's because we both have value. So when we come together, we are happy to share our values. But imagine marrying someone who is 0 and you are 100. There's no joy. You just keep pouring and pouring and pouring. And the funny thing, because that person is not self-aware, no matter how much of yourself you pour into them, they'll still leak the water out. At the end of the day, both of you will still be empty. That means you have really nothing to offer in that relationship.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Amen.
I'm still laughing about the water. But can I just add that you talked about relationships failing, and I imagine you're talking about marriage failing. Yeah. It's important to add to what Folashade said earlier about knowing yourself and staying true to yourself so you don't become another person. But I just wanted to chip in that when you become married, you actually do become another person. And you have to be willing to entertain that possibility. Now, who you are as a single person, your allegiances, your thoughts, your perspectives about life may remain the same at your core, your personality. Obviously, that will not change. But you have to be willing to be fluid. That ability to be flexible has to be there in your consciousness somewhere, so that you're not thinking that because you're trying to become who your marriage needs to survive or succeed, you're not losing yourself. That mentality has to be there. It's not, you're not being lost. You're not being, you're not throwing yourself away. You're just doing what it needs, as long as you're true to your values and to your faith. If that is not compromised, if somebody needs to do something else for a certain time period for the marriage to be happy, because sometimes that is what gets in the way of people's happiness. I want to hold my own position. I don't want to shift, right? I want to be static. You cannot be static and have a successful marriage. It's not going to work. Yeah. So you have to bear that in mind. You might not need to change too much if you marry somebody who somehow you mesh together effectively, but meshing is a changing process. And like what Brother Ina said about marrying somebody that is 0 and you're 100%. The truth of the matter is, if that 0 is willing to grow, there's nothing wrong with that situation on its own. Where the challenge can be is when they're happy and joyful to be 0, and they don't mind draining and sucking on the other person so that the marriage can survive. And then for a while it works, but at some point somebody gets tired of giving and giving and pouring and pouring. So if we all develop that ability to grow and that willingness to become who our marriages need to succeed, then I think we'll be all right.
Beautifully said. Thank you very much, everybody. So I'll just, it's like the case of someone who has anger issues, and then you've had a good relationship. Because of lack of self-awareness, you're unable to see yourself as the cause. Probably if the relationship broke as a result of maybe you slapped her, you abused her, you physically abused her, and then you can still continue saying, but she did it, but she did that. So you still passing the blame, you still passing the buck without looking at the mirror and say, yeah, I had a hand in this. And then the next thing that tends to happen is that you just paint that woman, you paint that man bad, and then you move up to the next relationship, and then the trauma continues, the issue continues. So I'll just give you a very good quote. I think there's a quote, I'll just drop it like that, drop it like it's hot, and then I'll move on to the next question. This is it's a quote by C.G. Young. It says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. F-A-T-E.
Yeah.
So I'll take it again. It says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and then you will call it fate. I know we've kind of like answered the next question I want to ask, but I still want to explore our thoughts. What is self-awareness, and why do you think it's necessary in relationships? What is self-awareness? In your own words, based on your own experiences, what do you think self-awareness is? And then why do you think it's necessary?
For me, self-awareness is knowing who you are, knowing what makes you tick, knowing how you are emotionally, knowing how you are financially as well. I think also being aware of your capabilities as well. I think being a Christian, first, I'm going to be personal. I grew up in a Christian household, and I used to go to church. But then I chose to work on my faith in Christ. If you asked me a few years ago who I was, I would have told you who I was. But that changed as soon as I actually decided to work on my relationship with Christ. So at that point, if you had asked me, who are you then? I would have said, I'm this, I'm weak, I'm this. But then being aware, knowing who I am in Christ, the definition of myself changed. So now that I'm aware that I'm strong. I'm a child of God, so I feel like my definition has changed, and it changes. So for me, self-awareness is who you are, and it can change. And when you have a relationship with God, I think what people don't really talk about is how when you have a relationship with God, you have to be willing to let God change you. And I think, yes, so now I'm aware of who I could potentially become and who God wants me to be. And that's just sort of the stage that I'm currently at now, where God is just taking me from who I was to who he wants me to be. So self-awareness can change, it can become a lot better. And yeah, I don't know if I'm making my point, but yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to what she said. I think the key word for me is becoming. Until you are self-aware, you would not know what you can become. You see, many people have lived with so much lies and self-deceit, so much that they have refused to identify who they are, what they are. How do I respond to things? How do I respond to anger? How do I respond to hurt? How do I respond to lack? How do I respond to failure? How do I manage disappointments? And because we have refused to tell ourselves the true story of who we are, we always want to say, no, I'm bigger, no, I'm this. Yeah, of course, this is who you are in Christ, and we love this so much. But we need to know who you are first as a person. Okay, so how do you handle predicaments, disappointments? Because you would not know the extent to which you destroy your home or destroy your relationship just because you have refused to understand how you respond to something so tiny. This is my personal story. So some weeks back, just last week, we were just talking, I and baby in the house, and she told me, I wish I knew you before I got married to you. No, we've never spent time together. So, of course, before I left Nigeria, we were in a relationship, but we've never spent one day together, for instance. Physically. This will be the first time that she gets to stay her whole life, a whole day with me. And she's like, I think I needed to have spent more time with you. I said, well, you are in this already. So for me, what I have to bring this here is, before I thought I was such a wonderful man. I would give myself great scores if you asked me who I was. And then I now realized, I just get angry. If you come into my space, I get offended. I didn't even think about that before. So she's made me realize that this is who I am. And it's also helping me in the journey of who am I becoming? Yep. Because until you know who you are, becoming becomes such a difficult thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think self-awareness, as everybody's already defined, I think is pretty spot on. Is essentially knowing yourself, who your identity, and I think that's quite is connected with your purpose, what you think your purpose in life is. If you've noticed recently, a lot of people have identity crisis, and for me, I think this is predicated on the fact that a lot of people have lost that purpose in life because once, and this is key because for most of our life, God was the center. So when God is the center of your life, you know what your purpose in life is. You know where the direction of your life is. You know where to go, what's happening. Once you remove that out of your life, once God is no longer centered in your life, now you have no purpose in your existence. You're trying to figure out what the whole point, because God is the central figure to everything that makes everything make sense. Once you remove that, there is no objective point of reference to anything. Anybody can just dictate what reality is or what the purpose of existence is. And I think because a lot of people have lost that key component, we are now running around trying to self-identify as anything because we think that by identifying as something will give us purpose and therefore make us feel like somebody again. So I think once it's impossible to be fully self-aware without a clear purpose of what's going on or who you are, why you exist in the first place.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Brenna touched on something quite important earlier when he said who you're becoming. So self-awareness exists on a spectrum. It's a process, it's work in process. And that's why we keep talking about that introspection and that reflection. So it's good to keep self-examining and see how you're doing in comparison to your current situation, because circumstances change, your priorities change. And like he was cool with, I don't know who he used to shout at when they moved his stuff, but now he realizes he can't do that anymore because the circumstances have changed. And it's that spectrum that this is where I am, that is where I need to be. What is my journey to getting to where I need to be? And specifically, we've said that self-awareness is the ability to see yourself clearly and objectively. It might not always be possible to be objective where you are concerned, but at least embrace the idea that I need to keep self-checking and self-examining so that you can be on that group's path.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, the arrows are hitting me every time. So from what I've gathered, I see self-awareness that you need a very good level of objectivity, because when you're thinking about yourself, I mean, there's a popular slang that goes like delulu. I mean, that means that you're being delusional. I mean, we hear that word a lot, that people are being delusional. So because delusion comes when there is no objectivity. So while you are reflecting yourself upon yourself, you're having that introspection, that objectivity is very, very important. Otherwise, you just be deceiving yourself and calling yourself what you're not. So another thing I think from what I've gathered as well is that self-awareness is not just about reflecting, being in touch with yourself, with your moods, with your feelings, with your strengths and weaknesses via introspection and reflection, like Sister Desola has said. I think it's also, from what I've gathered, it's your ability to also see how your actions will impact on other people, will affect other people. So the way I'm talking now, I think is going to affect Ina this way. And then the flexibility that you talked about will not come to play, that Ina is someone who appreciates, not pressures. So I should start my conversation in a certain way because I've recognized who Ina is, and I'm able to, it's just that self-awareness that it makes you think twice before you act. Am I acting in the best interest of the person I'm talking to or being in a relationship with? Very, very important. And I think, people in Sister Jesola's profession, they will say it's a part of emotional intelligence, isn't it? So it's just about understanding yourself. And it's a two-way street, isn't it? Yourself and others, yourself and others, yourself and the person you're dating, you're in a relationship with, in big sense of this conversation. Very beautifully said, everybody. So I'm just going to ask a very quick question, that when do you think self-awareness is very important with what we've been talking about? Do you think it should be done before a relationship? Should it be done during a relationship, or when should this self-awareness occur? Should it be an everyday thing or just a weekly affair? Anybody?
Okay, let me start. Self-awareness can be at any time, right? If it can be done before a relationship, it's better because it can save a lot, right? But I'll just put this here, that just in case you're listening to this podcast today, whatever level you are, maybe you are in a relationship, maybe you're not, maybe you're looking to, or maybe you just had a breakup or whatever it is, you can do your self-awareness or self-reflection, I would call it, at any point in time. And this will really help you. I'm saying this because I know some people are in a relationship that they should not be in, right? And if you take this time to just reflect and be aware of who you are, it will save you. It will save you time instead of wasting your time in a relationship that's going nowhere. I mean, for example, let me just say, okay, you're a child of God. You know that what you want for yourself and for your relationship is that I want to love God. I want a marriage or a relationship where we would love God together, where we would serve God together, where we would, whatever it is, I want to be holy. I want to, whatever goal it is that you want for yourself, that God wants for you is, and you're in that relationship and that relationship is draining you. That relationship is pulling you back. That partner is pulling you back to that place you are trying to get away from. So this is the time. It is your time. So as you're listening, it is your time. Reflect on yourself. Be aware of who you are. Be aware of whom God has called you to be and what you want to achieve. And if you need to leave that relationship, please do. And wherever you are anyway, you can reflect on it. Yeah. And it can be daily. It can be at any time, really. If you feel like you need to do an appraisal, do an appraisal. What could I have done better? What am I doing? Am I where I'm supposed to be? And then you know when to get out of a situation that you're not supposed to be. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So when should anybody else occur?
Yeah, I just want to say it's useful when you're clear on your identity. When you're clear on who you are, then you know the things that you do, and at the same time, you're clear on the things that you don't do. So I think having a set of personal standards is helpful. If you can make a list, if you have a value system, clearly defined value system, these are my personal values. We recommend start with 5. If you can work your life around those personal values, it is helpful. That clarity is necessary for you. As a human being, we have only so many, or how do I put it? We can only make so many high quality decisions in a day. So if you limit the number of decisions that you have to make at every point in time, because your values are clearly stated to yourself, if you stay true to them, then everything that does not look like it becomes immediately obvious because you have made a decision, a conscious decision. So I think that journey of self-reflection should start with making that decision. Who am I? What are the values that I live by? What do I believe? Right? And everything that does not align, remove it. You have that responsibility to yourself. You're that important. You're that valuable. Okay. And if you're already in a committed relationship, such as marriage, it might not be as easy to walk away. So you want to evaluate, how did we get to where we are? The person that you're in that relationship with, what kind of conversations do you need to start having? Sometimes, like I said earlier, we do better when we know better. If that enlightenment is not available to that person, what then do we expect them to do? So sometimes it might be a book. It might be a course that you would take. It might be, there's this thing my husband and I did a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's okay to mention it. It's called the Life Book, right? And they looked at 12 critical areas of a person's life. And then there were exercises, there were activities. For us, it was not necessarily about the exercises or the activities. It was a bonding opportunity for us. And it was an opportunity for us to see how aligned we were in goals and perspective, right? So he would write something, it was across the room, write something, and then we would check and we would see that we wrote things that are similar, right? So if you can do things like that before you marry, it is helpful. So that there is that alignment. But if you're already married, you can always find your way. As long as the person you're involved with is willing to grow and become better, right? So it's not from a judgment perspective. It is from a growth perspective. This is where we are. That is self-examination. Where do we need to be and how do we get there? That gap is where the work is. As long as you're willing to put in that work, there's no situation that can't be improved.
Just wanted to clarify what I was talking about the other time was for relationship, not marriage. If you're married, that's a different ball game. You're not going anywhere. You know, if it's not beating you or anything. Yeah. So just to clarify, okay?
Olashade's always been an auntie. Before we want to please, Davina, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think your question is about timing. The two speakers who just spoke have spoken very well. I think it depends on where you are right now. If you've just left a relationship, I beg you not to go into another relationship too soon. Evaluate. Be mindful. Go through yourself. Think. Check. Be sure that you are not the one at fault for why the last relationship failed. Because if it was your fault and you start a new one, it will still fail again because you are not self-aware. And we said for those who are already in any committed relationship, you can still do evaluation now and build self-awareness, and this will help to keep the relationship. So you ask, why is it important? Self-awareness is for me, a very fundamental aspect of relationship, because this is where relationships will build on or build upon. Okay, she just give an example. Imagine that you have two people who are not aligned because they're not self-aware of themselves. How do you run two different purposes in a single home, in a single relationship? So it's like one person is climbing the mountain, the other person is going down the valley. That can't work. So self-awareness is the point of alignment. Yeah.
I think I'll jump into the next question, and my opinion, basically, if I'm allowed to, on the question would be that I think even in a relationship, just practice that reflection every day, every time, because we said earlier on that it's knowing yourself and knowing how your actions impact other people. So as long as you are in interaction with other people, reflect. And because we do not, I was talking to my brother earlier on this morning, we were talking about a situation I'm going through currently in my life, and losing loved ones. And I mean, it's just quite difficult, yeah. But what in the ordeal I'm currently going through is telling me or reiterating to me is that you do not own tomorrow, but you have now.
You have now.
So now is a gift. So when you are in a relationship, you have now. So it's better you just have that reflection, walk towards your goal. We told you, I mean, God only owns tomorrow. So, I mean, God owns tomorrow. So why postpone anything? So if you exist as a person and if you are interacting with anyone, I believe reflection and self-awareness should be a continuum for everybody. So my last question will basically be, and what are the characteristics of self-awareness? How do you point out that this person is actually self-aware? How do we kind of like judge ourselves as being self-aware? Basically, if there are elements or characteristics of self-awareness. So, I mean, for instance, someone will say, like we've said, if you are self-aware, you are attuned with your inner thoughts. You are attuned with your strengths and weaknesses. So I would just appreciate if we can give more examples or more characteristics of self-awareness. If you are self-aware, this will be this, you understand this, you understand that. Do we get what I'm trying to say? Yeah, anybody, please go ahead.
I would say what you don't measure, you can't improve on. So if you're measuring, if you're tracking, then you can identify progress. You know what progress looks like. And it's that self-awareness. You can identify whether you're making progress or you're not. Because it's one or the other. There's no midpoint in this case, right? So, you've said, okay, you want to look at your behavior, how you respond to situations, right? So if your go-to behavior or response to a trigger is to shout, and then you're shouting less and less, you know you're making progress, right? But it starts with that decision. It starts with that recognizing that there's an issue and then actively taking steps. So like I said earlier, There are tools available. It might be a book, it might be a conversation with somebody, it might be an accountability partner that you're reporting yourself to. And there was a time I was working with somebody, and what I asked them to do was to write it down, write their responses, reactions to situations. They should just write it. At a point, they got tired of writing, so they started behaving properly. So it was just a case of, look, I can't be writing this report for this woman all the time, right? I'm just going to do what I need to do. So because what I asked them to do was, when you have done that thing that we said you should not do again, write me a report, right? So if you hold yourself to those standards, then you'll be able to monitor, you'll be able to track. So check yourself and specify the particular area that you're looking at. If it's such an ambiguous goal, you will not be able to measure it. So make it measurable, make your goals, make your targets smart, so you can monitor, you can rate yourself and be honest. I mean, it's very sad when we lie to everybody and then we go ahead and lie to ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's just ridiculous, really, because you are hurting yourself. You're not going to beat you. Mm-hmm. Right? So you might as well tell yourself the truth that, look, I shouldn't have had that additional biscuit yesterday. What I did. And I'm going to own it, and I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. So it's actually quite easy, to be honest. As long as you're clear on the areas that you're working at, it's quite easy for you to monitor your progress.
Good. A lot has been said. Anybody else? What characteristics of self-awareness? She said a lot. Anybody else?
For me, he has to live his life according to God's word. I've mentioned as well about the facade of being a Christian. A lot of Christians say they're Christians, but they don't live their life according to God's word. And being single, I think, so we have Colossians 3:5 talks about how if you're unmarried, you shouldn't have sex with someone, you shouldn't be having sex at all. And I think for me, that's a big thing. And I think the Bible, when you live your life according to the Bible, your definition of a lot of things changes. And when he comes, for me, I feel like he has to be living his life according to God's word. For me, abstinence is very important. Being patient, being kind, being prayerful, holding your hands up sometimes that you're wrong and actually admitting that you're wrong and actually be willing to change. A lot of things. When that time comes, I feel like God would lay it in my heart that, yes, he's here, and I would fully be aware that he's there.
Yeah, I think that here I have one way you know you're self-aware is if you are emotionally wise. Emotional intelligence is one critical dimension of self-awareness. And this will come from you being able to manage your own emotions. Many times we have destroyed relationships because we do not know how to tame or manage our own feelings. And we want to put this blame on the other person who is not responsible for what we're going through. Okay, so being emotionally intelligent will simply mean that we are able to manage how we feel. And the second quality will be the quality of empathy. Empathy will be being able to understand what your partner is going through at every particular time. One of the things I've learned in just 1 month is that I always look at my babe's face. Always, I look at her face because I need to know how she's feeling about everything. And she tells me, I like how you always observe. I always ask her, tell me what I said. How did you wish? Did it really hurt you? Because again, it's something I'm learning now. Before I just speak, I just say, I just do, but now I have to always ask, what do you think? For me, empathy is what makes me know I'm growing. Before, no one shares my space, no one shares my bed. If I keep my shoe here, it remains there, no one touches it. And today, I'm always reflecting, I'm always thinking, the way I said this, the way I did this, did that affect you? And number 3, progress and growth. She said that critically. Many times you need to know, set those tasks. Am I progressing? Am I making some improvement in relating with the person that God has given to me? Because again, you may think simply because, like she said, you can be very prayerful. You are a God on the pulpit. But when we go home, your spouse or partner is suffering. How do you know you're progressing? I'll end with this statement. A pastor told me this morning that how you know a Christian is not in the church, is to ask their wives and their children. Go and ask them how they relate with these people will tell you whether or not they are Christians.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, that's good. Good. So I think it's been a good pleasure. Huge pleasure, immense one, very listening to everybody. I'll just give us opportunity for us to make our closing remarks. If there's anything you think you probably left out, that's in line with the conversation we've been having today, you can just throw it out now.
I think being single, for all my single sisters, brothers out there, you need to have a stage of waiting on the Lord, like just wait and work on yourself. Like we've stated today, be self-aware, self-reflect. What you're praying for, are you what you're praying for? If you're not what you're praying for, then you need to work on yourself and let God work with you. So yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
So, this is for the singles, yeah? Whether you're a teenager, whether you are a youth, whatever it is, whatever age you are, I want you to know that you're not too young to start praying for your partner. I remember I started praying for my marriage when I was really, really young because I had two elder sisters and they told me, Shade, you're not too small. Start praying now for your partner. You never know what that prayer is going to do for you in future. So start praying. And another thing I want you to know as led that I want to say is that you're beautiful. You are amazing. You are extraordinary. You are more than meets the eye. God created you perfectly. So I want you to just know you need to be aware. I know you're practicing self-awareness. You want to know who you are, but this is who God has called you to be. Because so many people, I have seen so many people with this low self-esteem. They don't know who they are. They are, I don't know how to explain it, but this word is for someone here because this word was laid on my heart for you to know how special you are and how beautiful you are in the sight of God, and do not lose your wonder. You are more than meets the eye, and God bless you.
Okay, so I made a list. I make lists. Apologies, but I made a list of why self-awareness is beneficial. Okay, so I'll just round up with that. Self-awareness helps us become better decision makers. It gives us more confidence, and we're able to communicate with clarity and intention. This is useful for us in our relationships. It allows us to understand things from multiple perspectives. This is important because we don't. There's usually not one answer. There's not just one perspective to a situation, and that elevation, that ability to think, is called second, third, fourth, fifth order thinking. It's just recognizing the fact that your first instinct is not always the correct one. So you're going to need to be able to restrain yourself and draw yourself back and ask yourself, what else is an interpretation? What else is the possible interpretation to this situation? And that growth is self-awareness. So the more you're able to do that, you can identify that you're becoming better. You're not rash. You're not quick to jump to conclusions. You can take a step back and review from an informed perspective. Okay. Self-awareness also frees us from our assumptions and biases. It helps us build better relationships. It gives us a better ability to regulate our emotions. It reduces stress. Okay, reduces stress, and it makes us happier generally. And so that's my encouragement to my fellow married people. Let's be self-aware, let's self-respect. We cannot hold others to standards that we do not hold ourselves to. And I think if everyone took care of their own corner, we would have better relationships and interactions at the end of the day.
Thank you, great.
Two things I quickly want to say in conclusion. Relationships will require lots of prayers and will require a lot of work. You say it's very critical that we pray. It's also very critical that we walk. And one of the things about walking is what we're discussing here today, self-awareness. You must be self-aware. Self-aware will let you know what resources you need to consult. It will let you know what you need to do. It will let you know what assumptions you need to drop. It will let you know the scope of operation that you need to step into. Self-awareness, for me, is the most important work in any relationship, because this is where relationships will thrive. So whether you're single and you're going into a relationship, you need to be self-aware. Whether you're already committed into one, you need to be self-aware. And because we are Christians, Jesus is for us, and he wants people to have a mind that looks like him. And he himself has always been self-aware. So he knew who he was, and so he wants us to also know who we are, so we can better thrive in our relationships. God bless you.
Thank you, so good to know everyone, and Prince, yeah?
Yeah, I think for my closing remark, I just want to say to whoever's listening to this podcast, because there's been a lot of wise words have been spoken, and some people have the academic levels to speak on that level. And when you're listening to it, it might sound like it's a lot to kind of process. But just remember that you are already a conscious human being. So this, when it comes to relationships, these things are automatic. As long as your intentions are pure, you're not going to have a problem. It's not something that you have to intellectualize all the time. You don't have to try and think about it and say, what did the sister say? What should I do? What's the next step? Don't overthink it. This is something that's going to happen automatic. As long as you are true to yourself. And I like what the sister said in terms of following the Bible to the letter, because if you live for the word, if you follow teachings, the teachings of Christ to the letter, you're not going to have a problem. This is why he said in Matthew, I think he says, my yoke is light, so let me carry the burden for you. Because when he says this, he was talking to the Pharisees who were trying to intellectualize everything, trying to make things overcomplicated. And when you walk with God, when you walk with Christ, you're not going to get lost. You don't just sat nav. The direction is very simple. So just for people listening, just what I'm trying to give you this point, just don't overthink it. If you're a loving human being with a pure intention, these things will be automatic, because you want to be with that person, and you want to feel good about being with that person. You want them to feel good because it makes you feel good. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate everybody's contributed so far.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've had a good time listening to us, because I've had a very, very good time listening to everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and wealth of knowledge. And to all our listeners and viewers, we'll see you in the next episode. Continue to share and engage with the podcast. We are rooting for your growth. God bless you. Bye.
Happy Valentine's. You love.